Now, I don't know if you know what PSA levels are. I hope you do. If you're a man, you certainly should do. It stands for prostate-specific antigen. And these are things that the prostate give out if it's under attack from some sort of tumour. And you're supposed to get them checked every year, you know. And I think a normal level is anything under 4 nanograms per milliliter. And mine was 4.97, nearly 5. Well, so not very high, to be perfectly honest. Someone of 10 years older than me would expect 5 as a sort of mean level of PSA. So really I wasn't too concerned. But Tony said, maybe you should consider an MRI. It seemed to be taking a bit of a sledgehammer to a peanut, but I said, okay, you know, just to keep him happy, and I was supposed to keep myself happy as well. So I went into one of those MRI imaging suites, or whatever you call them, you know, a great big ring, and you get put on a flat bed and sort of ease through until this ring is around you, and then it fires these magnetic beams, you know, tung, 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 tung. Do you remember Regan in The Exorcist, the poor little girl, Regan McNeil, being examined for, well, I was being examined not for anything as beastly as Satan, but something as beastly, and it was in the prostate that they were looking at. What is a prostate? You may well wonder, and I'm still not that certain myself. It's not an organ so much as a gland, I believe, and it sits between a man, because only men have them, a man's bladder and his old fella, his todger, I suppose, and it has a tube going through it from the bladder, and that eventually ends up in the urethra, and it does something to make the sperm more fluid once it hits its target, I suppose. Makes I don't know, makes it less viscous. Oh, goodness knows. Anyway, it's a very important chap for men to have, and it does often go wrong. It gets enlarged and makes peeing difficult or too easy or something, and of course it is an absolutely prone bugger for cancer. Anyway, I've said the C word first off now. So, where were we? Yes, I had the MRI. Again, went home, didn't really think much more of it. Then the next day, Tony calls again, and then he says, oh, Stephen, something rather mischievous showed up. Good word, Tony, mischievous. I said, what does that mean? He said, well, you know, maybe you should go and see a specialist now. So he sent me to a fellow called Roger, who was a professor of urology, a very famous chap in his field, I believe. And Roger had looked at the MRI image, and he suggested a biopsy. Oh dear, how on earth do you get live at a prostate? You know, I think go up, it's either one tube or up the other. Well, anyway, it's all very personal and undignified, this story, so I might as well bite the bullet and come clean with you. It was a transrectal biopsy, so some sort of thing went up and took a clip of living tissue from the prostate. It's not an experience I'd recommend to my worst enemy. Really very unpleasant feeling. It's like taking an ice core, you know, in the poles. Anyway, they took these 2 bits out of me, just to be sure. Again, another wait, and then get the results the next day. And yes, indeed, there is a cancer there. A carcinoma, is an adenocarcinoma is the correct word, I believe. And these things are graded. There's a particular grading system for prostate cancer. It's called the Gleason score. And my score was 8, it seemed. We'll come to that a bit later, but that's high enough to warrant some sort of treatment.